Hello and welcome into Loftside Banter. On today's show, we're going to be looking back at the first two games of the NFL season. The first one being the Cowboys and the Eagles, played in Philadelphia. Then the Chiefs and Chargers played in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Sao Paulo? Sao Paulo, Brazil. We'll go with that one. How's that? We'll take a look at those. We'll take a look at some college football updates going on right now. Some games from week 2 or week 3, whatever it is, are going on right now. We'll talk some Bill Belichick and Patriot feud that continues. And then we'll talk a little bit about the injury to Caitlin Clark. So, what you're going to see here is there's always going to be 2 episodes that seems to be posted. The first one is the video, which we're doing now. Video is part of Loftside Banter as we speak. And then there's an audio one in case you don't want to look at my ugly mug, or if you just need to be on audio, or whatever the case may be. So the audio version will have all that stuff where it's, put together and everything else like that. So it posts 2 versions as it is anyway. And what's interesting is it'll post the video, then it will post the audio and everything else like that. Well, I have the audio running over here where I can put the opening in, the music and everything else. So I'm going to have to go in and take that audio away and do this one. So it's going to be a little bit of difference between the audio version and the video version. The video version, we're going to go right into it. We're just going to start, just like we're doing right now. The audio version is going to have all the opening and everything else that I've worked to produce over the last, 6 months or so. So again, feel free to choose either one. They'll both be up on YouTube. The video version will be up on Podbean, whereas audio will be just strictly here or there. So it'll be, again, a little different until we can figure out how to put all that together. I'm interested to see if there's somebody out there that wants to come and help produce all this stuff, because, well, we're getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and that's exciting stuff. So I realized we jumped into show news when obviously the big news is football is back. The NFL kicked off the season with the Eagles and the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football, and it did not disappoint, because it looked like early on we were going to have just the offenses scoring every single time they touched the ball. I think the first 4 possessions were touchdowns. So 2 for the Eagles, 2 for the Cowboys, and from there it seemed like that was just the way it was going to go. The defenses showed up for the second half. The weather showed up for the second half, but that's not even the big story. The big story out of this game was Jalen Carter got kicked out before he even had a snap. Before the defensive tackle for the Eagles, Jalen Carter, was kicked out of the game for unsportsmanlike conduct because he spit on Dak Prescott. Now, before we go too far into this, I understand that there is video of Dak Prescott spitting on the ground near Jalen Carter prior to him spitting on him. And here's what I'm going to tell you. He said, or he did this first, or they did that, or we're not 5 years old. Well, he did it first. It doesn't matter. Jalen Carter got caught spitting on somebody else. And do I think that there is a big rivalry between the Eagles and the Cowboys? Absolutely. I absolutely believe that. Do I think getting spit on out of the grand scheme of things as an unsportsmanlike conduct was enough to kick him out? Maybe, maybe not. But you are also a professional athlete. You should know that if you get caught doing something like that, you're going to be thrown out. And the refs made it very clear early on in this season that they're not going to allow things like that. Now, Jalen Carter is a big part of the Eagles defense. They need him because the Eagles defense got gutted over the offseason with coaches leaving and players taking huge contracts. Josh Sweat to the Cardinals is a big one that I can think of. Milton Williams to the Patriots is obviously the other one. They lost a lot of pieces and had to replace a lot of different pieces. So, Jalen Carter should know that he is a main focal point of that defense. And it looked pretty early like that Prescott was able to get around, not get sacked, everything else like that. The defenses, both of them, both the Eagles and the Cowboys looked like they were just going to give up every amount of point that you could possibly imagine. Then the second half came, and there were some adjustments made and everything else like that, and we had a pretty tight ball game throughout the rest of the way. The Eagles ended up winning 24-20, and Dak looked pretty good coming back from, again, more injuries. The Eagles looked okay. They looked skittish for a little while in that early second half, but they did enough to win, which is a staple for this Eagles team, is that they do enough to win without necessarily having to blow out. So anyway, the Eagles did enough to win against this Cowboys team. And the Eagles don't look game one early on, a lot of emotion going through everything. And, we're looking at a team that came off a Super Bowl, obviously played a lot of extra football to win the Super Bowl, right? There also are a lot of changes that come with a Super Bowl winning team. As mentioned, it's the fact that they're taking a lot of players. A lot of players are taking higher money and everything else like that. But looking over the box score, Dak Prescott had 188 yards passing, 21 of 34. Not blowing the cover off of anybody or anything else like that. But no touchdowns, no interceptions, so no mistakes. Jalen Hurts, 19 of 23 for 152 yards. And you go, okay, well, then that probably means that Saquon Barkley had a game. Well, 18 carries for 60 yards. He did score a touchdown. Jalen Hurts had 14 carries for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he did more with his legs, it seems like. I mean, at least scoring-wise. But again, the game was entertaining. Obviously, there was a rain delay or a lightning delay through this. So again, it was a weird way to kind of start off the NFL season, especially with Jalen Carter getting kicked out. People have criticized CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, 7 catches, 110 yards. So he had the majority of the yardage from Dak Prescott. But dropped 2 passes towards the end of that game that seemed catchable. And really would have helped the Cowboys come back to try to possibly win this game. I mean, 24-20 is, score a touchdown. That's it. You got yourself back in this, or even winning it, right? So CeeDee Lamb is still a top echelon wide receiver, whether he dropped a few passes or not. But it's interesting to see that that's early on some troubles with them, because the wide receiving core on this team should be one of the best in the NFL, with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens being your top 2 guys, right? It's a pretty big drop-off after that. But Javonte Williams for Dallas, the oft-injured Denver Bronco, scored 2 touchdowns. Now he had 54 yards rushing on 15 attempts. Miles Sanders, his backup, lost the fumble. So there was a turnover there. There are different pieces going through all this and looking at what Dallas was able to do in this game. And again, they didn't get blown out. They didn't anything else like that. Brian Schottenheimer's first game in charge. So Dallas looked pretty good against the champions. And the champions didn't look as well as they did towards the end of last season. So, I mean, it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very rash kind of judgment on one game, the opening game, on a Thursday night in the rain, with the tensions that started the game, if you will. But Dallas kept themselves in it. The Eagles looked like they could have been better. But we're at a point now where the Eagles know how to win games close. And that is more telling to me than blowing a team out. The teams that are able to make the plays to come out and win and everything else like that. Which means we shift to Brazil to talk about the game last night, the Chargers and the Chiefs. And I had mentioned that the Chiefs were probably still my pick for where they were in the division. That might have changed a little bit, because Patrick Mahomes was 24 of 39, 258 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. Okay. A good Patrick Mahomes game, not doesn't blow you away or anything else like that, but didn't make any mistakes, didn't anything like that. His touchdown pass was to Travis Kelce, who only had 2 catches, but he had a 37-yard catch. So I said in my previews that the Chiefs were still going to win the West because they're still the Chiefs. They still have Patrick Mahomes. They still have Travis Kelce. They still have Chris Jones. They still have people like that. The thing that I find interesting is the stat that they released during the game, which is the 11th different left tackle that they've had on this roster, was Josh Simmons starting last night. Their first-round draft pick out of Ohio State. And I said he was the best left tackle prospect as long as he could stay healthy. But the offensive line looked shaky. Now, he only got sacked twice. But the offensive line looked shaky. The Chiefs looked sluggish for a good portion of the game. And the Chargers looked the more dangerous team. Now, the Chiefs didn't go anywhere. They were still in the game to the end. 27-21 was the final score. But the Chiefs used to win these games. These were the games that the Chiefs won last year and had that 15-2 record or whatever it was. They lost this one. Now it's the first game of the year. I'm going to keep that as a kind of quotation / asterisk and anything else like that because this team can win games like this. They just didn't last night. The Chargers look good. The Chargers, Justin Herbert looked good. Missed 9 passes all game, 318 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2 of them to Quentin Johnson, who couldn't catch a pass his first few years in the NFL. Keenan Allen scored a touchdown. A well-known commodity to Justin Herbert. So I think the moves, and with Harbaugh being Harbaugh and the way he prepares his teams and everything else like that, Omarion Hampton was the starting running back, their first-round draft pick. 48 yards, again, nothing to write home about. Justin Herbert ran pretty well. That team looked all right, even with some backups that had to come into the game on their offensive line. But, these teams are going to be close together, I think. The Broncos are the other team in this division that are going to make noise. So I think there's a 3-way race for the division title. I do. I think the Chargers have made a statement by this win. It was in Brazil, and again, it changes some things when it's not there. And the argument that a lot of people are making these days is they don't like the games in other countries, which is fine. It's a global game. It's going to be a global game, whether we like it or not. The growth of this is going to continue. There's no way it only sticks to the United States. Now, there have been discussions of maybe doing a Super Bowl outside of the United States, which I think is a little much. And as a fan, when your team is losing a home game, a true home game, to then have to go travel to Brazil, London, Germany now, all these different places, yeah, I can understand being upset by it. We can't think small with this. The market for the NFL is huge, and it's going to continue to grow. The funny thing, at least from watching the game, is you're seeing everybody in the stands that are just football fans. They're not necessarily a fan of the Chiefs or whatever, or they didn't have their jersey or whatever, because there's just so many different teams that are in that. There was no real, team section. It was just mixed and matched of every possible NFL team you could imagine, any player you could possibly imagine, just all around and stuff like that. But the growth of this game is not going to stop. So, to the people that get upset by it, my question to you is why? Why waste your time getting upset by this? Yes, I want the Patriots to have their typical number of home games. I want them to be able to have home field advantage and everything else like that. And again, they're at a point where it may not matter because they're just in a transition period. But you can't expect the NFL to just go, oh, we're just going to stick to the United States. We have an opportunity for growth worldwide and be a worldwide product. No, we're not interested in that. And for the little guy that spends the money to go to these games and pay whatever it is to park the car, to go to these events before the game, during the game, when game's not there, I've been invited to go to Patriots games. Last year they were in London. I went to the game to watch the game at the stadium, and they had all the stuff on the field and everything else like that. It's a cool way to make money when they're not even in the same country. I understand. When is it going to be about the fans and not just making money? I'm sorry, I think we've passed that point quite a while ago. Where yes, they don't want to alienate their longtime fans, but they're going to continue to get fans from this worldwide market. So for myself and having the opinion of let's not do a Super Bowl outside the United States, let's keep it here, let's do that. That's fine. I think I'm fighting a losing battle on that. I'll speak to it as much as I want to on this platform. But again, I think I'm fighting a losing battle. Business is there to make money. And we all tend to forget that in sports, that it's a business, and it sucks. Because you look at Red Zone, you look at all these different places that are all these different things that are changing hands. You know, NFL Red Zone is now getting commercials because it's owned by ESPN and everything else like that. It sucks. It sucks to take the thing that you're used to or the thing that you love to attend or be a part of and stuff like that. You know, I can remember the Patriots going 1-15 before they started going on these runs and having, you know, some of the best 20-year span of any team. But it's not the same anymore. The owners spend billions of dollars. You look at the Celtics, you look at the WNBA teams now. You look at the evaluation going for the Los Angeles Lakers in billions and billions of dollars. They're going to spread this out and get as many people to buy their product in any way, shape, or form that they can. And if you feel like that's, you know, alienating you as a fan, I don't see it getting any better for you. I don't. And that's just my opinion here. But these teams are not going to leave money on the table because you feel hurt. That's a business. That's what it is. When people walk into restaurants and go, you know, even small mom and pops nowadays, oh, you know, well, I won't come back. Okay, I'll find other people that will. If I keep doing what I think is right, I will make more money even if you're not here. Now, there are other places that obviously don't want to have anybody leave upset and everything else like that. The NFL teams don't care. You have a terrible experience at a stadium, you may be able to go out and be able to say, hey, I had a terrible experience, and they'll do something to help you for the most part. But for the other 65,000 people that are going to keep showing up, they're not losing out on much. So if they can get people to watch their product, buy their product in any facet for places, Spain, Germany, England, Italy, wherever, they're going to do it. So these games are obviously not going to go away. It's not a popular thing amongst old school fans, and why should it be? But that's just the way it's going to kind of work out. So expect to see talk of a Super Bowl outside of the United States. Expect to see maybe franchises outside of the United States. It may, you know, we may be able, let me back up. We may be seeing a franchise outside of the United States sooner than you think. And the travel aspect of it and everything talking that. I mean, Roger Goodell is not an idiot. He understands that there's money to be made out in the world market. And he hasn't been shy about it. So I don't like it as much as the next person, but it's coming. And all of these CBAs and everything else like that, they're going to cover all this stuff eventually. Hey, the travel is this, there's got to be compensation for that, whatever. It's coming, and it's different. It's not something that everybody's going to resonate with, especially here in the States. And unfortunately, it's just not going to get any better for you. So you either have to grow with it, deal with it, or just not be a part of it. Those are your three options. And I don't think I've said anything too in-depth here. I've basically laid a blanket out over this whole subject. But it boils down to that. You either accept it, ignore it, or not be a part of it. That's the growth of and I'll sit here and argue the point every which way. But that's what's coming. All that and the Chiefs lose. I mean, it was a hell of a Friday night, Let's take a look at the first week's games here. Loftside Bantr will be at Gillette Stadium tomorrow to see the Patriots and the Raiders. So anybody that recognizes me, which won't be any of you, and that's fine, come say hi. But the Patriots and the Raiders, Christian Gonzalez is out for the New England Patriots. Still a hamstring issue, which puts a little bit of strain on the Patriots secondary because there's not a ton of talent past Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez. Now, I understand keeping Christian Gonzalez out for week 1. Not a problem for me. I would rather them do that as a fan. Excuse me. Carlton Davis is the left-sided cornerback, the one they brought in from the Lions to be opposite of Christian Gonzalez. So he's probably going to be matched up against number ones. Their other options are Marcus Jones, who's typically their nickel back. Not the band, just so we're clear. Alex Austin, who I like. I liked Alex Austin. They brought him in off waivers a couple of years ago. This was a Belichick move. And I thought he played really well. They brought him back on a free agent contract. I thought he played well when he was healthy last year. And I like him. I think he has a legitimate shot at being a number 2 starting corner in the NFL somewhere. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but I like Alex Austin. So, Alex Austin, DJ James, who they brought over. Again, not a ton of time, but he was a 6th-round pick in 2024 for Seattle out of Auburn. He played well in the preseason. Not somebody I would hang my hat on as being a shutdown corner anytime soon, but he's the other guy right now. And then Charles Woods, who they brought in off waivers, but he's questionable. I believe he's a Packer. But, that's what you got, and that's what you're going to have to deal with. Now, if I'm looking at their depth chart and I'm looking at all this different stuff and deciding who's going to go, what, where, it's probably going to be Marcus Jones or Alex Austin. Those are your two options. So we'll see what they decide to do with that. Starting wise, it looks like Stephon Diggs is going to play. Will Campbell is probably going to play. He's been questionable the last couple of days. I don't want to see Viridian Lowe in there, unfortunately. I just watched a lot of him last year, and there was not a ton of great things from that. I like some of the moves that the Patriots made. None of these are going to have any effect on the game tomorrow, but I like Tommy DeVito coming in. I liked some of the other kind of moves. They moved away from some players, including Kendrick Bourne, Javon Baker. You had 8 wide receivers. You had to clear some out and get yourself some depth somewhere. Again, once you get past where their starters are, and I don't mind the starting lineup from all over the place. I mean, Drake Mays, your quarterback, Ramondre Stevenson, Trevion Henderson are going to be your 2 guys out of the backfield most of the year. Diggs, Douglas, and Booty are going to be your 3 guys probably starting tomorrow. Offensive line looks a little better. And again, a little better from what it was last year is not great. So Max Crosby's probably going to have himself a game. That game, I hope, doesn't involve hurting Drake May in any way, shape, or form. But Will Campbell and Jared Wilson, your 2 starting left side offensive linemen, both rookies. All right, that should tell you what you had on this roster was absolute dog shit last year. And then your defense has dogs on it. You know, Christian Barmore, Milton Williams, Keon White, Robert Spillane, Christian Ellis, Harold Landry. Those are your, front seven, give or take. I think the Patriots are going to probably win this game. I just don't see the Raiders having enough talent, and I'm going to go look at some of their depth chart just to be sure. But, I mean, Geno Smith is the guy there. Austin Genti, I'm actually really excited to see his first game, especially against this front seven defense. Jacoby Myers, Dante Thornton Jr., and Trey Tucker are the three wide receivers there. An interesting offensive line. I mean, Colton Miller I've liked for a while. Dylan Farnham, the left guard. Again, decent guys up front. And then your Max Crosby, Adam Butler, former Patriot, Jermaine Pratt, Eldon Roberts, former Patriot. Those guys on defense, I mean, it's a pretty good defense. I think it's a more even game than what people are thinking. But I think the Patriots win that one. Start off the season 1-0. You have the Buccaneers and the Falcons. Michael Penix gets a chance to be the starter full-time, as we mentioned in our previews and stuff like that. We're going to see how the Buccaneers do without Liam Cohen helping Baker Mayfield be the best version of himself, so we can see if that continues or not. They're in Atlanta, but I think the Bucs probably win that game as well. The Bengals and the Browns, I think the Bengals have this one. I think they're going to get off to a quicker start. Let's see what the defense looks like this year. I think the Bengals make the playoffs this year. But Browns are the Cleveland Browns. And even though they're in Cleveland, they're the Cleveland Browns. There's no real light at the end of the tunnel quite yet. Joe Flacco's the starter again there. Does it eventually get to Shador? Probably. I think Shador's probably going to get the chance to start before Dylan Gabriel does. I don't think that's a hot take in any way, shape, or form. I just think that that's the way it's going to boil down. Cincinnati 5.5-point favorites. We'll eventually go through and do lines and stuff like that as far as like gambling and stuff like that. But, I don't condone it for other people. I myself partake, and that's just one of my many vices, as I've mentioned. But I think they probably cover that pretty easily, especially if this offense is anything like it was this week. It's all about their defense, the Bengal defense. Did it improve in any way, shape, or form comparative to where it was? And again, looking at a depth chart from now, TJ Slayton's in there, Trey Hendrickson's back, Demetrius Knight. Actually, I liked that pick out of South Carolina. I believe out of South Carolina. A lot of people criticized it early on, right after the draft. Oren Burks comes over from the Eagles, so I mean he's won a Super Bowl last year. And then some different corners: Cam Taylor-Britt, Dax Hill as your nickel back, DJ Turner are the kind of guys slated to start for next year. So improvements? Question mark. We'll see with that game. Another 1:00 game. The Dolphins visit the Indianapolis Colts with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones obviously didn't have a whole lot of success in New York as a Giant, but got that top dollar contract at one point in time. So talent's there. I mean, that's the money that should have gone to Saquon, that most people will say. Indianapolis is favored by 1.5. The Dolphins, Tua's health is going to be the way that this team goes. I think you take Indianapolis with the points, especially when they're on the road. The Dolphins just don't alert me this year as much as they should. I think there's probably some problems in that locker room, and I'm being a little speculative on this because the honeymoon seems like it's over with Mike McDaniel. And if he doesn't have a good year this year, injuries or not, I think he's gone. And I don't know. Dolphins don't scare me as much. Tyreek Hill's still there. I mean, Jalen Waddle, I love Jalen Waddle. I think he's a great wide receiver. But Tua's health situation and keeping him upright is going to be the problem in Miami this year. Another 1:00 game, you have the New Orleans Saints at home with Who Dat Nation against the Arizona Cardinals. I think this one is probably a Cardinals win. I said, and I had somebody actually on YouTube leave a comment saying that he thought my take with the Arizona Cardinals was nuts. That Jonathan Gannon, I think, will be on the hot seat at some point in time this season, and may even lose his job at the end of the season. I still stand by that because if this season gets away from the Cardinals, I think he's in trouble. Kyler Murray is supposed to be the guy. You brought in Marvin Harrison Jr. You have some upgrades now this year comparative to last year, but you had the division lead last year and you lost it. And I don't hear positive things from the people I talk to about Jonathan Gannon. And again, I could be totally wrong, and that's fine. I'm allowed to be wrong. And I love that the fact that there's somebody out there that disagrees, that call me nuts. I love it. I think the Cardinals win this one, though, because the Saints have nobody to throw the football. Spencer Rattler is the guy starting. I'm going to take a look at their depth chart really quick. Spencer Rattler won the job. Alvin Kamara's still there, which is great. Chris Olave and Brandon Cooks is back. So you have some decent wide receivers here. Once you get past them, there's nobody really on this roster that could catch a football. You're looking at Tyson Hill still on this. He's out for this weekend. Trevor Penning, I think Northern Iowa guard they drafted last year is out for the first game. Cameron Jordan's still on this team. Devon Godshaw over from the Patriots last year. They have a guy that can tackle anything, Demario Davis. And then Kool-Aid McKinstry. Justin Reed came over from the Chiefs. So it's going to be a rough season for the Saints. And I think Who Dat Nation needs to make peace with that, which they never do. But it is what it is. I think the Cardinals win this game. They're 6.5-point favorites right now. Another 1 o'clock game. Pittsburgh Steelers against the New York Jets. And if you're a football fan, you know what that means. Justin Fields is the new starting quarterback for the New York Jets. And Aaron Rodgers is the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm at a point where Pittsburgh Steelers don't scare me all that much. They're 2.5-point favorites. I think they probably beat the Jets. I think the Jets are going to have a rough season. I like Justin Fields. He's still 26 years old. I think there's still time for him to be a good NFL quarterback, but he's just not the complete package where he was drafted to be. And we've seen it with Chicago. We've seen it in Pittsburgh. So, I mean, we're at a point where he's got a 1-year really audition to show that he's the guy, and he can be the guy. He's got some weapons around him. But before we go into the Jets, let's take a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They brought back Mason Rudolph to back up Aaron Rodgers. Doesn't move the needle. Aaron Rodgers doesn't move the needle all that much for me either at his age. I don't think he's the same quarterback he's going to be in any point in time that he was in Green Bay. I don't think he makes Pittsburgh a Super Bowl contender by any means. I think he has weapons with DK Metcalf on this team now. Roman Wilson on this team in his second year. If I'm not mistaken, it's his second year. It is. Pat Freiermuth, Johnny Smith, your tight ends. He's got a good offensive line that can protect him, keep him upright. Again, injury history over the last couple of years at least. TJ Watt got his contract. He's here. Cameron Hayward's still on this team. Darius Slay in the back of the defense there as a veteran. And then Jalen Ramsey's here. You know, they've changed a bit of their defense. But again, I don't see a Super Bowl contender here. And maybe that's just me. But they don't scare me all that much. But we'll kind of see what that brings throughout the season. We'll see what kind of version of Aaron Rodgers we're going to get. This seems to be his last go-around. I think the Steelers take this. They probably cover the 2.5. Commanders and Giants. Commanders are 6.5-point favorites. Giants are going to be a mess offensively to start off. Russell Wilson, I don't think, is the guy anymore that he was last year in Pittsburgh. He's making the most money. He's starting as the starter. Jackson Dart has won the second position as far as, or the second on the depth chart, at least according to this. Tyrone Tracy had a decent year last year for the Giants. Interested to see what he has as a full-time starter now. Malik Neighbors, love Malik Neighbors. Darius Slay, I actually like Darius Slay. Wandell Robinson, he's got to stay healthy. A jack-of-all-trades type of wide receiver. Offensive line, not the greatest. Defensive line, stellar. Brian Burns, Robertson Harris, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, Darius Alexander, Raheem Roaches. And then you also have Kayvon Thibodeau. You also have Bobby Okereke as far as your linebackers are concerned. The defense looks okay. The defensive line looks great. But defensive lines don't score you points. And if you can't score points, defensive lines are going to wear out because they're always going to be on the field. So I think the Giants have issues. I think they're still going to come last in the NFC East, as I mentioned in the preview. The Commanders, I think, win this game pretty handily. Jaden Daniels, Rookie of the Year last year. Again, sophomore slump. Does that come up? Does it not? Scary Terry got his contract extension or got his pay bump or whatever it is. He's back in the fold. He had been practicing with the team, so, he wasn't really out of it. Deebo Samuel's here. Noah Brown. Offensive line was upgraded with Laramie Tunsil, Josh Connolly Jr. Defense still has questions, especially that secondary. Marshawn Lattimore did not look great since coming over here. Trey Amos didn't look great last year. Trey Amos. Not Trey Amos, I'm sorry. Mike Sandster still. Again, didn't look great at times last year. Again, rookie year, I understand it. Trey Amos is their rookie this year, I believe second round pick this year out of Ole Miss. So that was one of the guys they brought in to help that secondary. Von Miller's here. Bobby Wagner. That is a veteran leader linebacking core if I've ever heard one. Jaguars and Panthers play. They're playing in Jacksonville. Jacksonville 3.5-point favorites. Bryce Young is the question mark, is one of the things the Panthers have, because he looked good at the end of last year after he was benched. After he was benched for Andy Dalton, they brought him back in. He looked pretty good. And there's some hope there for the Panthers with him. The Jaguars are at that point where Trevor Lawrence has been in and out of the lineup, has had shocking games, has had really great games. Now comes Liam Cohen, who helps Baker Mayfield look like the quarterback we thought he could be. Can Trevor Lawrence now be the next one that kind of takes that step? He never really truly got out of that rookie groove where he's inconsistent. So I think this is a make-or-break year for Trevor Lawrence. And they've paid him, and they've done all those different things. They've brought in weapons. They've upgraded as far as an offensive line. Defense has some players on it that can, it's all can they put it all together is the question. You have Travis Hunter now. He can play both sides of the ball. Is he going to play both sides of the ball? Brian Thomas looked great. You have Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby. You drafted another running back. So I think Etienne's probably on the hot seat for his starting role as well. I think the Jaguars take this one, probably cover as well. Titans and Broncos, I think this one's probably a lot further away. This is starting the 4 o'clock slate, by the way. The Broncos are going to beat the Titans and Cam Ward. Cam Ward, obviously the first overall pick. But there's going to be a learning curve here. I think the Titans are going to have a learning curve. I think the Broncos have not only had a great defense last year, upgraded it with some draft picks this year, have been able to fix some offensive line issues that they might have had. So I think the Broncos, they're 8.5-point favorites. It might be closer than that, and it might be garbage time touchdown or something like that, but I think the Broncos take this one. 49ers and Seahawks, I think the 49ers have a lot of injuries to bounce back from. I think the Seahawks going from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold doesn't necessarily make a huge upgrade, but this is where they're at with this team. Mike McDonald had the most wins in franchise history for a rookie coach. So can he build on that? Again, a lot of questions for the Seahawks. The 49ers are, can they stay healthy? Are the players that left really going to be a detriment to them? Jawan Jennings is now in there. Ricky Pearsall is in there. Marquise Valdez-Scantling is now a wide receiver. So not as many weapons as you remember because Brandon Ayuk's out. They traded for Sky Moore towards the end of the preseason. Offensive line, still phenomenal offensive line. Brock Purdy is still your quarterback. If you get to Mac Jones, you're in a lot of trouble. But Mac Jones is your backup now. Defense still has Nick Bosa. There are some moves on this team to free up some money, some guys that were disgruntled and everything else like that. But I think the 49ers, if they stay healthy, are probably in that echelon of winning that division. Lions and Packers. Now, this is a big game in that 4 o'clock slate. Lions are actually the underdogs going into this because the Packers have picked up Micah Parsons. And I'm not saying that changed the line all that much, but the Packers defense looks pretty good. Jordan Love stays healthy. Offense is going to be pretty good. They drafted a wide receiver for the first time in 20 years in the first round, Matthew Golden. How does he move the needle all that much? He's a speedster out of Texas. I think the Packers probably still take this. They probably still cover and everything else like that. They're in Lambeau, so that's the deciding factor for me. I think this is going to be a great game, though. Your Texans and the Rams. The Rams are 3.5-point favorites. Matthew Stafford, how healthy is he? He didn't play the whole preseason. Not that he needs to really anymore, but Rams, Texans. The Texans last year with C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud kind of went through that growing pain of his second season. Didn't look quite as good as he did the first year. Can he bounce back from that? And again, he didn't have a terrible year, but the Texans didn't look great going into the playoffs. And at this point in time, I think they're probably going to be better. So I think another close game, but I think the Rams probably take this one. Your Ravens and your Bills. Ravens are 1.5 favorite. They're in New York. Again, this is your Sunday night game. Banger of a game. My pick throughout all those things, I said the Bills would at least get to the Super Bowl this year. I believe that. I think that they beat the Ravens here. I think I'm going to take the underdog on this one. The Ravens look good. I think they have the most complete roster, but they start slow a lot. They did last year, and I think they will this year. Vikings and Bears are your Monday Night Football game. And I've followed the Bears a little bit more closely because of what they did last year, drafting Caleb Williams and going into this kind of profession now. I wanted to see where the Bears could kind of upgrade themselves, and you go from the first pick and where they could go. Obviously, disappointing year last year, fired Matt Eberflus in the middle of the season for the first time ever as a franchise. They bring in Ben Johnson, offensive genius from the Lions, right? Vikings drafted J.J. McCarthy last year. J.J. got hurt. He had to go with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold looked good up until the end of the season. And now it's J.J. McCarthy's team. They even had Daniel Jones last year at one point. But J.J. McCarthy, Carson Wentz is his backup. Those are your quarterbacks. J.J. McCarthy, I think, is going to have a good year. But there are questions, right? There are questions to this. Aaron Jones, still your running back. Justin Jefferson, dog. Adam Thielen comes back from Carolina. Cool little video to see how excited his family was to go back to Minnesota. Steps into a starting role because of the Jordan Addison suspension for 3 games. New look offensive line help J.J. McCarthy. Defense gets a few pieces in place. Had a decent defense last year. I don't think they're really that much better, but they're decent. Vikings have the ability to make that run. I'm going to say this is closer because the Bears made massive upgrades to the places that they needed to. Offensive line bringing in Joe Thuney, Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson in the middle of that lineup. Grady Jarrett is here now. Those are the main positions. Grady Jarrett being a defensive tackle, obviously. This team still has Roma Dunze. They have Luther Burden now, who I think was sneakily one of the best wide receivers in the draft. DJ Moore is still here. Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet, still both here for tight ends and stuff like that. They've put the pieces in there. It's a little quick to say, hey, if Caleb doesn't have a good year, he's not the guy. But they've put a lot of pieces in place for him to be the guy. And if he's not, you got to start asking those questions. That's kind of where they're at with the Bears. I think this one's going to come down to it being pretty close. I think the Vikings probably win. More complete team still at this point. But if Caleb shows the flashes that we kind of saw, I think the Bears are a sneaky good team. Sneaky good to the point of maybe getting to the playoffs. Maybe not. NFL Week 1 preview in the books. We look at some college football, some scores and stuff that are going on right now. Texas is destroying San Jose State. I wasn't expecting Arch Manning to not be a good quarterback this week against a crappy team, but he looked a little rattled last week. I watched the end of that game, Texas and Ohio State. I was rooting for Texas. I've seen Ohio State win. I'm a guy that wants to root for the teams that I haven't seen win in a while. Texas, I haven't seen in a national championship game since Vince Young, so obviously I wanted to see something a little bit different. I also have a little, my father grew up being a Michigan fan, so I grew up with the idea that Michigan was always better than Ohio State, and obviously they've been the last two national champions. So, Ohio State looks good. They look like they're going to be right there again. A pretty big defense. As I'm sitting here watching this, Arch Manning just threw a horrible interception in the end zone. I believe it's his first turnover. But the call for Arch Manning to not be a good quarterback, I don't think is realistic. I think he's going to go through growing pains. Remember, he didn't play a ton behind Quinn Ewers. Couple of injuries here or there. He played in a couple of games a couple of years ago. Or last year. I think he played a couple of games last year. He's the full-time starter. He's going to have some issues. He's still got eligibility after this year. I think he's probably going to go back to Texas because there's going to be some growing pains, as we mentioned. He'll get a chance to put in a full, hey, we've had you working with the system. You were the starter for 1 year. You made some mistakes. Let's go through and not make these mistakes the second year. And the Steve Sarkisian offense in the red zone is atrocious. It's always been atrocious. Anywhere he's gone, he's had a tough time with the red zone offense, and I don't understand it. But I think he'll be fine. I think Arch Manning will be fine. Let's see what he can kind of do. The next 3 games, I think, if he's making mistakes like this, like he just made, over the next 2 games where they're lesser opponents again, and by the time they end up playing Florida, I think then we'll really know what he's going to kind of be the rest of the year. Heisman, I think, is out the door. Didn't look good enough for that. Some other top 25 games, Penn State's number 2. Number 3 is, let me see if I can find the updated rankings now. Ohio State 1, Penn State 2. LSU is 3. LSU looked really good, beating Clemson last week. Georgia's 4. Miami's 5. They beat Notre Dame. A classic rivalry game. They ended up winning that game. It ended up being pretty close. Oregon 6. Texas dropped to 7th. Clemson dropped to 8th. Notre Dame dropped to 9th. And then South Carolina rounds out your top 10. Some new teams that are in this now. Utah ended up becoming the next team into the top 25. They looked pretty good as well. But Florida State has looked really good. They beat Alabama, who was in the top 10. Tommy Castellanos, who left Boston College and went to Florida State. Now, everybody in Florida, the state of Florida, that's Florida State fan, is excited about Tommy Castellanos. And they're playing East Texas A&M right now. So, again, these numbers mean nothing at this point in time because he was 7 of 10 for 230 yards and 3 touchdowns throwing the ball. He ran the ball 4 times in this game. He looked good against Alabama. And, again, that's great. He looked good against Florida State as the Boston College starter. And I'm a Boston College fan, so I'm going to tell everybody in the state of Florida that's a Florida State fan. Just understand, Tommy Castellanos has flaws. He will show you those flaws at some point in time, and you'll all be upset. I'm warning you now. And I wish nothing but the best for Tommy Castellanos. But I think it was the right move to replace him when they did last year for Grayson James or whoever it was last year. Boston College, obviously not necessarily a football powerhouse, hotbed of college football talent and a team that doesn't have fans that travel very well, and yada, yada, yada. I've heard it all. But Tommy Castellanos obviously was replaced at Boston College for a reason. And if you think he's stepping in to be the savior of a Florida State Mike Norvell operation, yes, they're going to have a good year. But he's going to show you flaws, and you're all going to get upset about it. And I'm going to tell you I told you so at some point in time. That's that. Other college football news. Bill Belichick has banned the Patriots from the UNC or North Carolina practices and scouting their players, which is petty at its very base. It is very petty. If North Carolina plays the way they've played last against TCU, you ain't going to want to scout their players anyway. They looked atrocious after that first opening drive. And to hear Bill Belichick say, oh, we were out coached, we were out this and that. I have a bad feeling for UNC this year. And again, I love Bill Belichick and everything that he brought to the New England Patriots. As me as a fan, to be able to see championships and numerous of them. You know, obviously he's reached a point in his life where there are some things that are far more important. And again, I'm not getting into his personal life on this podcast. I don't care. I'm here to talk about sports and everything else. And if he's distracted with all these other things and his young girlfriend or whatever, that's for him. I don't care. It's not news to me. The thing that Belichick is doing is petty to the Patriots. And if that's the way he wants to go, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. You can ban whoever you want, I suppose, for scouting. You're giving your players less of an opportunity, and that may not go over well with some of them. I understand why they played the way that they did, because there's 70 new players on this team, a ton of transfers. They're not going to gel all together. It's going to take time, but, you know, if that's going to be how it's going to, you already got the morale down, and you're telling your players, oh, I'm banning one of the teams here. They can't scout you. Well, I think there's going to be some massive changes going into next year. And I'm not saying Bill Belichick's going to get fired. I'm not saying any of that. I just think North Carolina's going to have some massive changes going into next year for that football program. Whether it's players leaving or whatever the case may be, it is what it is. And then one of the other things that came up was Caitlin Clark got hurt. And this comes at a time where this sport, women's basketball, is going to be really looked under a microscope because of all the financials that are going to come along with it. They're going to make tons of money, and Caitlin Clark is the reason for it. And her being out the rest of this year, I don't think affects any of that. I don't think the value is going to go down from what they're going to do. But Caitlin Clark being out the rest of the season is going to put a drop in the numbers that is going to be contentious on whoever is trying to purchase a team, the TV rights, and everything else like that, which is dumb. But with the dip, that's where they're going to go see it's a one-man show. And all the players that are in that league are going to say, well, it's not a one-man show or woman show. And again, I'll correct myself on that. It's not a one-woman show. It's just, that's the argument that's going to be made. And it's going to be a hot topic in the offseason. So I think they're still going to get their money. I think they're still going to I think they're on a $60 million TV deal. And now we're talking about probably quadrupling that. There's going to be networks that pay top dollar for that because they're going to get ratings and the players are going to be able to make more money. And everybody's hopefully going to be happy at the end of it. This whole wearing the shirt and everything else like that, I think is probably going to go by the wayside for a little bit at least. But, you know, it's disappointing that this is something that has happened at this point. And not disappointing because people get injured. Players get injured. Caitlin Clark is not an exception to the rule. But there's going to be a drop in viewership. There's going to be, the Indiana team is not going to get as many viewers. And that's just kind of the way it goes. It's a hiccup, but I think they still probably make what they're going to make. But believe it or not, that concludes the hour of the show coming back. and I say the show coming back. The show has been here. It's just I wanted to get those team previews out and do all that stuff, and then kind of bring it up to the start of the season, so that way football was at the forefront of all this. So I know there were stories and stuff that were missed and all that different stuff. And so if there's something you think I missed, by all means, go to loftsidebanter@gmail.com. That's Loftside BANTR at gmail.com. Let me know what I missed. Leave a comment like my friend calling my Arizona Cardinals take nuts, which is fantastic. It makes me so happy that somebody can disagree. But we'll have some changes with the show as well as we've grown. I don't want to get into too many details, but there'll be hopefully more banter, and I'll leave it at that. So I appreciate everybody listening. www.loftsidebanter.com. There'll be some updates on the website that I haven't done in a little while because, again, I'm running this kind of by myself until we grew to a point of, I need some help. And I think we've kind of reached that, which is great. But some other things that we'll get into, working with card collectors and everything else like that for sports cards, which was a big thing for me growing up, is something I want to include on the show. So we'll be talking with some of them. We'll be talking about some of the stuff that I'm doing behind the scenes to keep this thing running. And again, I'm pretty excited with how this has kind of grown. And the one thing I know I need to get better at is social media posting and stuff like that. I'm an old man. Social media posting was never something that I was really good at to begin with. But trying to keep you guys updated on what's going on. So I appreciate it. Enjoy your college football here today. Enjoy the rest of week 1 of the NFL. And we'll do a recap for hopefully Tuesday or Wednesday show. I say or Wednesday because Tuesday or Wednesday will probably be the time in which I can get everything together, edit it together, and everything else like that. So I thank everybody for listening, watching, whatever it may be, and we'll see you for the next show.